So good day, everybody. I'm Evangelina Esquejo, and I'm honored to be here with you today for the PECB Regional Webinar for Asia Pacific. Thanks to our partner Whitehall Consulting and PECB for inviting me to speak today. Our topic is AI in cybersecurity for the Philippines' digital future. We will talk about how artificial intelligence is shaping the cybersecurity landscape of our country, which can also apply in the broader Asia Pacific region. Before we dive in, a quick introduction. I'm currently the Director for Advisory and Consulting at Ubiquity Inc., a boutique consulting firm based in the Philippines. I have over 25 years of experience in IT leadership across various industries and have been both on the vendor and customer side of IT. I've been a certified information security manager for more than 10 years, and I hold multiple other certifications, including governance for enterprise IT and ITIL V4. And I'm also involved in professional communities like ISACA and the IT Service Management Forum. I'm speaking today as a person who has seen the early days of IT and how it has evolved for the past 30 years, which brings me both excitement and concern about its future prospects. I hope that after our session today, you have learned new information and will take away insights that will prompt you to take action and apply them on a personal and professional level. So here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the state of digital in the Philippines. Then we'll look at our cybersecurity landscape. We'll explore how AI is both an ally and a threat in cybersecurity. And finally, we'll discuss future outlooks and open the floor for questions. So all your questions will be addressed towards the end of the presentation. Okay, let's begin with the Philippines state of digital. So a quick trivia about the Philippines. We are a country of approximately 116 million people with 7,641 islands. It used to be 7,107 islands, but thanks to advanced mapping technology, new islands have been discovered. And so the new official count is 7,641, out of which only 2,000 islands are inhabited. So you can see that we are geographically dispersed and separated by water. But despite that, the Philippines is rapidly digitizing. According to the Data Reportal website, we have more mobile connections compared to our population, and our internet users is at 197.5 million. On the average, a Filipino spends 8 hours and 52 minutes per day on the internet, making us the top internet users globally. The global average is actually just 6 hours and 38 minutes. So imagine a Filipino spending 9 hours of his time on the internet on a daily basis. Looking at our demographics, 65% of our population is between 15 to 64 years old, and with an adoption rate of 84% versus our population for internet usage, you can surmise that much younger and even older citizens have phones and uses the internet. Again, additional information, there is no legal limit or age limit for owning cell phones in the Philippines, but there are restrictions on their use in schools and for minors. So if you are a parent, you have ultimate discretion on when to allow your children to have phones and have access to the internet. Our high number of active internet users is concerning from a cybersecurity perspective. Without proper awareness and education, each of these users can be human vectors for cyber risks. So to put these numbers in perspective, we compare it to some of our ASEAN neighbors. So that will be Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore. Okay. For readability, I was not able to put all the ASEAN members, so apologies for that. But just to put some perspective, you can see here that Indonesia has the highest population and the number of online users follow. They are also the highest in absolute number of users. However, they lag behind in percentage, so there's still a lot of opportunity for increase in their numbers. In the same token, the Philippines also has the second highest population and also ranks second in absolute digital figures. 2024 report by the Department of Information and Communications Technology, or DICT, states that over 70% of government services are now available online. These were enabled by the National Broadband Plan and the emergence of fintech platforms that moved us further into a cashless economy. So key reforms like the Ease of Doing Business Act and the National Cybersecurity Plan are laying the groundwork for secure and efficient online services. And these initiatives are crucial for building trust and resilience in our digital infrastructure. Our e-commerce market is also booming with 19,050 online stores operating in the Philippines across various e-commerce platforms, and that would be Shopee, Lazada, Temu, and the like. We were at 28 billion US dollars in 2024, and it is projected to reach $40.5 billion by 2027 with a compounding annual growth rate of 13%. So overall, the digital economy of the Philippines is expected to really boom. Our digital economy is defined as the economic activity that results from vast interconnectedness of people, businesses, and devices through digital technology like the internet and mobile networks. It also encompasses all transactions that occur on digital platforms such as e-commerce and online banking, and relies on digital infrastructure, data, and innovations to create value, increase efficiency, and reach a global audience. According to the Philippine Statistics Administration, our digital economy was at 38.5 billion US dollars in 2024, and it already contributes significantly to GDP with over 11 million workers involved. Forward looking, the 2023 E-Economy Southeast Asia Report, a multi-year research program launched by Google, Temasek, and Bain & Company to shed light on the digital economy in Southeast Asia, stated that the Philippines' digital economy is expected to hit between 80 to 150 billion US dollars by 2030, primarily driven by sectors like e-commerce, which includes online media, travel, transport, and food delivery services. So while digitalization brings growth, it also increases our vulnerability to cyber risks. And these are the different risks that we are exposed to. We have a larger attack surface, the expansion of digital systems such as online banking, mobile apps, IoT devices creates more entry points for attackers to exploit. Convergence of technologies. The integration of operational technology with information technology in sectors like power grids increases our vulnerability. A cyber attack on one can have cascading effects on other criminal infrastructure. We also have increased reliance on new technologies. The adoption of technologies like AI, cloud computing, and blockchain introduces new cybersecurity concerns. While AI can help with defense, which we will talk more about later, it can also be used by attackers, and cloud migration brings its own set of security challenges. When it comes to human factors, digitalization can increase internal threats, either through malicious intent or through gross negligence from employees who are unaware of security best practices, such as clicking on malicious links. And of course, with big data, there's also data management challenges. The massive amounts of data generated by digital processes can be a target, and managing and protecting this data, especially with remote work and cloud migration, becomes more complex. So we now, given the future prospects of our digital economy, the question is, how are we prepared to deal with it? Where are we now in terms of the Philippines cybersecurity landscape? So this table, published in the PhilSec Summit website, provides a brief summary of the threats we dealt with in 2024. As you can see, the first half of 2024 alone, thousands of credentials have been compromised, and organizations were on the receiving end of thousands of phishing attacks, which grew by 23% compared to 2023. 84% of organizations reportedly have experienced security breaches, and the frequency has been increasing. If you look at the news, the cybersecurity landscape in the Philippines is alarming. We're prone to attacks due to our digital expansion, and cyber risk is no longer episodic, but is now a constant, a 24/7 battle against unseen enemies, and our information security teams are busier than ever because of all these attacks. A 2025 IDC survey commissioned by Fortinet found that 78% of local firms faced AI-powered attacks. And in a newly released report by Microsoft, the Microsoft Digital Defense Report, the Philippines is in the top 20 countries targeted by cyber threats. So, to assess how prepared we are in terms of addressing all of these cyber threats, let's take a look at the Global Cybersecurity Index. This was developed by the International Telecommunication Union. It is a trusted reference that measures the commitment of countries to cybersecurity at a global level. It raises awareness of the importance and different dimensions of the issue of cybersecurity. So in the fifth edition, which is shown in the screen, countries were assessed along 5 pillars: legal measures, technical measures, organization measures, capacity development, and cooperation, and those are aggregated into an overall score. We can see here that the Philippines overall score is 93.49. If you compare it to the fourth edition report, the Philippines only got a score of 77. So to get to a 93.49 score represents a huge progress. In terms of ranking, we were 61st in the fourth edition, and now we are at 53rd. Okay, so but there's still much room for improvement, especially as you can see here in areas like capacity development and cooperation measures. So if you take a look at the details of capacity development, it measures awareness, campaigns, training and education, and incentives for cybersecurity capacity management. Cooperation, on the other hand, measures partnerships between agencies, firms, and countries. And these two areas are where we have huge gaps and we need to work on. So in my earlier slide in the State of Digital, we compared the Philippines to some of our ASEAN neighbors. Here we have a similar comparison to see where some countries are at in comparison with the Philippines. Note that our neighbors are already in the role modeling tier, where overall scores are between 95 to 100. The Philippines is still in the advancing tier with an overall score of 93.49. So clearly, there is a lot of catching up to do, and efforts are underway to address this. So as a matter of fact, last August, the Department of Information and Communications Technology announced that they will be intensifying efforts to improve the country's global cybersecurity index and elevate it to Tier 1 role modeling. Recognizing the need for collaboration, the ICT is coordinating efforts among the government, the academia, and the industry stakeholders to achieve the highest level of GCI. And this further underscores cybersecurity as a national priority. Okay, now let's move on to the National Cybersecurity Plan 2023 to 2028. This is actually a build-up from its earlier version, the National Cybersecurity Plan 2017 to 2022. It continues to provide emphasis on cybersecurity and resilience and formally articulated the coverage of cybersecurity beyond the traditional CIA, which is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. It now includes non-repudiation, authentication, privacy, and security. The new cybersecurity plan also explicitly favors a risk-based, standards-based approach over a one-size-fits-all model by assessing organizations individually, not by sector, and promoting adoption of international cybersecurity threats. It recognizes that cybersecurity varies across organizations and allows for flexibility for effective cybersecurity governance. So the DICT is tasked with coordinating and monitoring implementation through the National Cybersecurity Interagency Committee. Okay, so very recently, only a month ago, the E-Governance Act was also signed into law by the President. It mandates that DICT is to prescribe and implement minimum information security standards for all government systems. It also emphasizes the need to protect government critical information infrastructure and mandates all government agencies to comply with the standards set by DICT. So as you can see, sans all these recent signing or enactment of laws, the Philippines is already at 20%, 20 or perfect score on the legal measures, but it's further being improved by the government to make no room, to leave no room for confusion in terms of implementation. Okay. In the area of international cooperation, you might have heard also that the Philippines was one of the first signatories of the UN Convention Against Cybercrime, which was signed by 72 countries last Saturday only, October 25 in Hanoi, Vietnam. The UN Convention Against Cybercrime establishes the first global legally binding treaty to combat cybercrime and aims to strengthen the international cooperation, especially in sharing electronic evidence for serious crimes. It seeks to complement existing instruments like the Budapest Convention. Okay, so the treaty has been signed, but while it was signed already by the ICT head Henry Aguda on behalf of the president, it will only take effect 90 days upon ratification. So the ratification in itself is a separate process. It involves submitting the treaty for Senate approval and requiring two-thirds vote. So once the Senate concurs, the President formally ratifies the treaty and submits the official document to the UN confirming ratification. So while it was signed already, the implementation will not take effect until formal ratification at the Senate level. So in the meantime, the Philippines, along with 81 countries, already signed and ratified the Budapest Convention on Cybercrime. It criminalizes certain cyber-related offenses like CIA violations, forgery, fraud, child pornography, copyright infringement, and etc. So the Budapest Convention, it was developed by the Council of Europe with participation from observer states like the US, Japan, and the Philippines. And the key difference with the Budapest Convention, while why we also need to take a look at the UN Convention, is that the UN Convention has broader criminal justice cooperation. So there's much more sharing of information and more collaboration between countries in terms of investigations. And it covers not just cyber dependent crimes, but cyber enabled crimes as well, like non consensual image sharing or online fraud. So, to summarize the key points in our landscape, the threat is real, and attacks are getting faster, more frequent, and smarter. There is strong support from the government to improve our security posture, but there are still challenges. Funding is one. The government has a budget deficit, and while the amount to date is well within forecast, government expenditure is expected to decline following recent events. In fact, there has been announcement in the news of late that the projected growth rate of the Philippines for this year up to next will decline due to reduced government spending. And these are, well, you can see in the news about the ongoing investigations on budget insertions and flood control projects. And this is actually prompted the government to take more prudent approach in terms of spending. So the government's intent has been articulated in various plans, laws, and policies, but implementation remains a challenge given the number of stakeholders involved. There is lack of public awareness on cybersecurity and insufficient talent to implement the initiatives as well as the controls to mitigate the impact and the required response to contain incidents. Okay, so there are a lot of challenges in cybersecurity, and there is an opportunity to take advantage of AI to help us address these challenges. So our next topic is the role of AI in enhancing cybersecurity. So AI is transforming cybersecurity. I mean, I'm sure it's transforming a lot of areas, but also try cybersecurity. In the IDC survey commissioned by Fortinet, it says 92% of local organizations in the Philippines now use AI in their cybersecurity system. Okay, but note that the survey is not okay. The survey is actually just a sample size of the entire population. Okay, there were 1,000 uh, local organizations that were interviewed, and those that were interviewed indicated that 92% of them use AI in cybersecurity system. Okay, so AI can help in anomaly detection by learning what normal looks like for users, devices, and networks, can profile them and flag any deviations like unusual locations or accessing files at odd hours. It also detects anomalies such as sudden spikes in data transfer, unusual port activity, or unexpected software installations. AI can identify outliers in your large data sets. So there are a lot of solutions already out there. I will not name them, but these solutions are already available in the market and actually being used already by a lot of organizations. AI also helps in malware detection. It can flag unauthorized file access, registry changes, and perform even static and dynamic code scans. In fact, it can also detect zero-day threats by identifying patterns not seen before, or even detect, polymorphic malware that changes its code to evade detection. Okay. In phishing detection, AI can help in email content analysis, flagging phrases like verify your account. Have you noticed how many emails you have in your spam that contains the word verify your account? That's your phishing detection solution working for you. It can check for misspelled domains or suspicious redirects. It can also compare fake logins, login to pages, or it can even compare using image recognition fake login pages to legitimate ones. Okay, so and even on the prevention side, it can help in phishing and email filtering. Okay, how else can AI help us in security automation? We said already earlier that the work of an information security engineer or operations team is already 24/7. Okay, and AI can actually help them by triggering predefined actions when threats are detected by blocking malicious IPs or domains, revoking credentials, or isolating infected devices. It can also help them in their workflows like security orchestration, automation, and response platforms already embed AI to help them. And if you already have an existing playbook for your incident response, AI can even enhance them by learning from past incidents and suggesting optimal response paths. So, on the security policy enforcement, it can ensure compliance by monitoring configurations, enforcing security policies, automatically remediating misconfigurations in cloud environments or endpoints. So it's really uh, perhaps some engineers out there cannot imagine working in security ops without AI. Okay. So AI can also be used in behavioral analytics. It can monitor user behavior and detect insider threats or compromised accounts. It can help in fraud detection, especially in the finance industry. AI can forecast potential fraud based on historical data and help financial institutions block or investigate suspicious activity. It can identify fraud rings or coordinated attacks. It can analyze transactions as they happen and use machine learning to score risk levels and block or flag high risk activity instantly. So, as a case in point, the Central Bank of the Philippines already requires financial institutions to provide capability for real-time or near real-time fraud detection. And I think this would not be possible without the help of AI. Okay. In fact, in Project Sapiens of the Central Bank, they reviewed AI and machine learning in the Philippine financial services, and they have identified at the center of the image, you can see the major use cases, and at the heart of it is fraud management system. Under network security, there are network engineers out there. AI can perform real-time monitoring and analysis. It can process volumes of traffic and system logs in real time and detect threats faster than manual or rule-based systems. It can also perform contextual analysis by correlating multiple events across systems to identify complex attack patterns, because remember the enemy is also getting sophisticated, right? And AI refines detection rules based on historical data and feedback and reduces false positives. So by reducing false positives, our security operations team is allowed to focus on genuine threats. All right. So AI is actually a strategic ally. AI uses historical data to forecast likelihood of future attacks, vulnerability, exploitation trends, and resource needs for incident response. It can also assign dynamic risk scores to assets, users, and systems, which can help in prioritization. In the area of vulnerability management, it can scan systems, identify vulnerabilities, and even rank them by risk level. They can also recommend patches or mitigation strategies based on threat intelligence. We don't have to think about it anymore. I mean, we can, of course, review after the AI has helped us generate all these vulnerabilities, but it makes a lot of our jobs easier. In the area of adaptive cybersecurity training, okay, AI can also be helpful. I've heard of solutions where they have personalized learning experiences where training content is adjusted based on the learner performance. Okay, in an organization with different levels of awareness on cybersecurity, an AI-enabled platform can dynamically adjust the training modules to match the learner's individual needs by assessing the current knowledge, the skills, the risk profile, especially you may have different risk profiles depending on your information access in the organization, your approval authority, you know. So all of this can result in different types of trainings, and AI can help you make that dynamic. And if you're also having problems during trainings, AI can also help figure out where you're having problems, and maybe require you to repeat your trainings as necessary. Okay. And AI can also help us in simulating threats. All of the threats that we discussed earlier, uh, and we'll discuss in the subsequent slides, can be simulated using AI. So in summary, AI can be a trusted partner in cybersecurity ops. It can be a reliable ally in managing day-to-day tasks. It can provide tremendous benefit to the organization. Imagine like improving your responsiveness from, whatever previous data you have to near real time and even real time responsiveness. It can reduce your cost, and it can simplify your operations by automating your workflows and simplifying your workflows. It can also be an enabler of proactive and resilient strategies. For example, by shifting from being reactive to proactive security, it can predict threats before they occur. So it can help build resilient systems that adapt to evolving attack methods. However, however, with great power comes great responsibility. AI must be transparent, fair, and secure. So we know about the regulatory requirements around AI. There's a lot of paper on this. There's even uh, a local version in the Philippines, right? So all of these principles need to be complied with and need to be implemented as we use AI in cybersecurity. For example, transparency and explainability. This means making AI systems that are understandable to users, developers, and regulators. We need to know how it works. Privacy and data protection. In cybersecurity, we always say sharing of information is on a need to know basis. So AI must respect user privacy and comply with data protection laws like GDPR and the Philippine Data Privacy Act. This includes minimizing data collection to only what's necessary and securing personal data during storage, processing, and transmission, and ensuring transparency in how our data is used. Bias and fairness. AI must be trained to avoid discrimination or unfair treatment. Okay, because if you put in the wrong data, it can result to biases. So bias can arise from skewed or incomplete training data or even poorly defined algorithms. Accountability and human oversight. So AI cannot stand on its own, although, AI decisions, for certain decisions, AI decisions must be traceable, and behind an AI, there is a human that has clear responsibility for outcomes of its decisions. Okay, human oversight is important because it ensures that AI does not operate unchecked, that critical decisions are reviewed and verified by qualified personnel, and that errors or unintended consequences can be corrected. So in cybersecurity operations, human analysts should validate AI-generated alerts before taking action, especially in high-stake environments. Okay, so like any other system, lastly, AI is also a system, and so it also needs protection from attacks and misuse. Okay, especially as we increase our reliance on them. So AI presents tremendous benefits and should further be leveraged to improve our cybersecurity state. However, we also need to understand that what are the threats that are brought about by using them? So in the next slide, we'll cover this. For example, AI-generated phishing and social engineering. AI tools like PhishGPT and FraudGPT generate phishing emails with native language fluency. Imagine that, right? They have grown really smart that they can even use your native language to mimic your writing styles and provide even context aware urgency like payments or whatever. They automate persona creation and can distribute and create multi-channel payloads in email, in WhatsApp or other different other channels. And so examples of how social engineering can be done is these are, you have the pig butchering romance scams where AI bots impersonate romantic partners on dating apps and social media and lure victims to invest or shell out money after weeks of emotional manipulation. Social engineering example is, imagine also a mother receiving a call from someone sounding like her daughter claiming to be kidnapped. The voice was AI cloned using postings in TikTok and YouTube clips. The scammer was nearly paid before the real daughter called back. Even our migrant workers are subject to social engineering. There are fake loan officers out there who targeted migrant workers, publicly posting need for financial help. You may be ranting on social media and saying that, sweldo na naman or it's salary once again, but it will just pass by your hands and get spent right away. So those kinds of posts can be target for social engineering by these fake loan officers who will offer emergency loans, and the victims will end up sharing their credentials, including passports, OWA IDs, bank details, and the scammers use this data for either identity theft and unauthorized withdrawals. There are also phishing via fake job offers where victims submit personal documents and pay processing fees only to discover that the jobs were fake. So please make sure that when you submit your CV, you're sending it to the right person. The Department of Migrant Workers have actually taken down almost 70,000 such posts in coordination with Meta. So guys, the threat is real. Don't just share um, information in social media. Don't wear your heart on your sleeves. Keep keep it to yourself as much as possible. Okay. Another type of threat is the data poisoning and model poisoning. You know, data poisoning is corrupting the data used during training. Okay, so model poisoning, on the other hand, is altering the model after it has already been trained. So these two often overlap. Poison data eventually reshapes how the model responds to users. So for example, attackers inserted legitimate sounding phrases into spam emails during training. And because they started putting all these legitimate sounding phrases, the AI learned to misclassify spam as safe, and this undermines the email security. AI models can also accidentally memorize, reproduce, and leak sensitive information from their training data or prompt context. Model inversion is a privacy attack where an adversary prompt attempts to reconstruct input data from a trained model. Okay, so be careful what you put, the data that you put in your training instances. Organizations may unknowingly leak private information through publicly available models out there. And of course, there are a lot of ways to address these threats. Access control is one, and regularization techniques like preventing to overfeed specific data points can be tools to address these threats. Okay, the other threat is deepfakes and synthetic media. Deepfakes and synthetic media are forms of digitally created or manipulated content using AI. The deepfake swaps people's face onto another person's body in a video with intention to misinform, disinform, create reputational damage, or for identity theft and fraud. One example of deepfake is our president's drug use, which has been confirmed by both the Philippine government law agencies and independent fact-checking bodies as deepfake. Another example of deepfake is an incident, I think this was in Hong Kong, where, but it probably happened also in the Philippines. In a corporate setting, one of the finance team members was in a video call with supposedly their CFO, who is actually being impersonated by somebody through deepfake. So an employee may be getting payment instructions from someone impersonating as the authorized approver. So there are a lot of tools already available to detect deepfakes. I've also known of one startup company that has started to create the agents to detect deepfakes. And the head of that startup actually gave me a tip to detect deepfake. If you are in a video call with people and you want to know if you're dealing with a person, because the camera may be on and showing a video of another person, but it's actually not them, you can request them to put their hands in front of their faces. If the image does not change and you can see the hand, then maybe these are deep fakes, or you're probably dealing with an AI or not the real person. Okay, so that's a quick tip for you guys. So AI is both a shield and a sword. Its dual nature means we must harness its strengths while mitigating its risks. This balance is key to a secure digital future. Okay. I apologize if I have been dumping a lot of numbers on you today. In earlier slide, I said 92% of the companies are using AI in cybersecurity, and in this slide, saying that 21% of the Philippine enterprises are adopting AI. So just to reiterate myself, the 92% figure mentioned earlier was actually a subset only, because it's from a sample data. Okay. But this number is showing that only 21% of the Philippines have adopted AI. So my take on this is that, there's still a lot of companies that are probably not, the 92% may not be representative. There's still a lot of companies that need to adopt AI. There is a 50% growth in adoption, and I expect this to be higher in the coming years. We have no choice but to adapt to AI to catch up. Like the internet, AI can be a great equalizer between developed and developing countries. And if you are not able to leverage AI, you will be put at a very disadvantage. So know that while you refuse to evolve and adapt as an organization, your unseen enemies are exploiting AI. Okay, and it continues to evolve and becomes more powerful. They can create malware and trigger various types of attacks for you. So AI is poised to become the backbone of cyber defense in the near future. It it is revolutionizing how threats are detected, analyzed, and neutralized across sectors. Governments will increasingly rely on AI to safeguard national infrastructure and respond to cyber warfare with speed and precision. Businesses, on the other hand, regardless of size, will adopt AI-driven tools to protect sensitive data, automate compliance, and monitor networks in real time. And even the grassroots communities and individuals will benefit from intelligent systems that defend against phishing, malware, and identity theft, making cybersecurity more accessible and proactive. So as digital threats grow more sophisticated, AI's ability to learn, adapt, and scale will make it indispensable. Its integration into our everyday cybersecurity, from barangay level systems to enterprise grade platforms, will make a shift towards smarter, faster, and more resilient defenses. The future of cyber protection will be defined not just by technology, but by how deeply AI is woven in our fabric of digital life. Okay, so in the public-private partnership, the future of AI-driven cybersecurity is also increasingly promising, especially in regions like Southeast Asia and the Philippines. As cyber threats grow more sophisticated, governments and private entities are recognizing the need for deeper collaboration. These partnerships are expected to evolve from active alliances in strategic ecosystems that share data, resources, and expertise to build more resilient digital defenses. So this is actually the Global AI Council of the Philippines. We have our counterpart in other countries. This is a demonstration of the public-private partnership as regards AI, and there's actually a call from them to participate um, in whatever in several means to contribute in creating the global AI report for the Philippines for 2025 and 2026. So if you're interested, please check out their website and sign up. In the coming years, public-private partnerships will likely focus on joint threat intelligence platforms, AI-powered incident response systems, and even shared training initiatives to address the cybersecurity skills gap. Governments will rely on private sector innovation to secure critical infrastructure, while businesses will benefit from regulatory support and national level threat insights. So the convergence of AI, cloud infrastructure, and policy reform will be key to enabling these partnerships to scale effectively and protect both public and private interests. Okay, so this is my last slide before the Q&A. Learning is paramount in AI for cybersecurity. This applies to both machine learning and human learning. AI systems thrive on data and continuous learning, which allows them to adapt to evolving threats and improve their defense mechanisms over time. In the same token, human learning is also important. Human learning is just as critical as machine learning in the future of AI-powered cybersecurity. While AI can automate threat detection and response, it still relies on human expertise to guide its development, interpret complex scenarios, and make ethical decisions. So cybersecurity professionals must continuously upskill to understand AI, manage risks, and respond to emerging threats that AI alone may not fully grasp. In the future, we'll see a growing emphasis on cybersecurity education and training that integrates AI literacy from government agencies to grassroots communities. And the public-private partnership will play a key role in creating inclusive learning ecosystems um, to get this done. Human learning will remain the foundation that ensures AI in cybersecurity is effective, ethical, and aligned with societal needs. So thank you everyone for spending the time with me today. I hope it was time well invested. I turn you over now to Kian, who has been collating some of the questions, your
Oh,
questions, which you have posted on the chat. So Kian.
hello everyone. My name is Tianing. I'm the social media officer for APAC at PCB. First and foremost, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to Venji for the insightful presentation. We have received some great questions from our audience, but due to the time constraints, I will only pick up a few. The first question for you is, would it be possible to implement an AI-generated watermark to identify which content is created by AI and which is not, since misinformation caused by AI has become increasingly prominent nowadays?
Yeah, that's really a challenge. And it might be a good idea to put that AI generated watermark to identify which one is created by AI and which one is not. So in the universities right now, for example, I shared earlier that I am going through my global MBA already, and one of the topics that need to be considered is whether you will submit your paper in as AI assisted, or even if AI is allowed in submissions, right? There's a lot of I was speaking to a financial analyst, and he was also being quoted by, he's often quoted by newspapers for his forecasts about the economy and the financial forecast. And when he gave his um, expert opinion to the reporter, it was rejected only because they were claiming it was from an AI. But the expert was saying, no, it came from me. I had it probably rephrased by the AI, but the idea came from me. And so he tried to adjust and rephrased again the expert opinion and submitted to the paper, and then again it was rejected. So this represents a very valid point. It comes to a point already where opinions of the AI and your opinion will actually be muddled, and you don't know already who is generating what. Okay. And I think an AI generated, I mean, I'm not sure if you want an AI generated watermark for everything that for everything that's been generated by AI, knowing fully well that some of the inputs to the AI also came from humans. So if you put an AI gen watermark, there is also like taking out uh, recognition or from the human to eventually put the data or fed the data to the AI in the first place, right? So these are some of the, I like the question. I'm sure a lot of you guys are thinking about it. So I think we can explore that in more detail. And yeah, we might need further serious study to assess whether an AI generated watermark will be useful, because from a business perspective, of course, people will also say, does it really matter? But from a copyright perspective or creative perspective, maybe that's another use case that might be worth looking into, where probably an AI generated watermark will apply. Okay, I hope that answered your question. Thank you.
Great, wonderful. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us, Wenji. I would also like to thank our audience for their active participation. And as we conclude, I'd like to remind everyone that a recording of this webinar will be available on our website, and you will also be informed via email once it's ready. If you have further questions or feedback, please feel free to reach out. Once again, thank you, Wenji, and thank you everyone who joined us today. Have a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you, everyone.